Thank you, Wendell. Thank you all. Very nice introduction. All I can do is disappoint you after an introduction like that. Just as a prefatory remark, I have to say truth in advertising. There have been a number of mistakes I've made, a number of things I've done over the years that make me wonder whether I'm really qualified to teach on some of this stuff. Let me just share one of them because I think it's a good stepping stone to what we need to talk about today. This happened when I had just been installed Dean of the Business School at Regent University. And one of the first things that happened after that promotion was that one of our alums of the MBA program made it onto the show The Apprentice. You familiar with that show? The Donald Trump show? 1 million people applied to be on this show. 18 made it on. One of our students, our alums, we'll call her Marcia for the sake of discussion here. You'll see why I can't use her real name shortly. But Marcia made it on to the show, and we were just absolutely delighted by that. And so the media came to me and said, what do you think about Marcia's chances on the show? And if you're not familiar with the show, 18 people come on, they split them into 2 teams, they battle it out on a number of different business tasks. Whichever team makes less money gets called into the boardroom. One of them, usually the leader of that task, gets fired. And they keep doing that all the way down to the point where there's just one person left, one apprentice. It's really the best of what corporate America can offer. You know, bring in 18, fire 17 of them, social evolution or something like that. Whatever the case may be, that's the way the show works. What do you think of Marcia's chances? And I probably sounded a whole lot like a college coach. Yeah, well, she's been trained up well, she's strong, she's determined, I think she could go all the way. And so they write some story with a headline like, you know, Dean likes alums' chances with the Donald. What else is he going to say? So part of my job that semester was to watch reality TV. And I dutifully did so every Tuesday night on NBC. I watched The Apprentice. And for the first several weeks of the show, Marcia kind of laid low. She didn't take a leadership position. She was a good contributor, you know, part of the team. Sometimes her team won, sometimes her team lost, sometimes they were called into the boardroom, sometimes they weren't. But Marcia survived several weeks by just getting the lay of the land and seeing how things worked. I thought it was a pretty wise strategy. Finally, around week 8 or 9 of the show, she did step up into a leadership position for her team. There are only about 4 or 5 on each team by this point. And how do you think Marcia did? This student of mine, this alum of our illustrious business school. Well, I've kind of signaled what's going to happen here. Right? She crashed and burned. I mean, it was ugly. She was officious, she was bossy, she was harsh, she was controlling. Nobody wanted to follow her anywhere, except maybe out of morbid curiosity or something. But as a result, her team lost miserably in that task. They were called into the boardroom, and Marcia was summarily and ignominiously fired by the Donald. She got into her taxi and she went home, and the media came back to me at that point and said, well, what do you think of Marcia now? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, you never know how NBC edits these things. I heard it wasn't really as bad as it seemed and all that kind of thing. But NBC didn't put the words in her mouth. NBC didn't do the nonverbals. NBC didn't script any of this. Marcia did an abysmal job as a leader in that role, in that very public role that, you know, millions of people watching our alums. But I thought it was over at that point. I thought, okay, this is behind me. I don't have to watch this dumb thing on Tuesday nights anymore. And they say bad publicity is better than no publicity, so that may not have been a terrible thing. Well, it got worse. Because 2 days later, I'm sitting in my office with a couple of Bolivian businessmen, guys who I thought would donate to the school. I thought these guys were good for about $1 million. To the business. So this is what deans do, by the way. Some of what deans do, if you're ever wondering. We talk with people about giving lots of money to the school. And so I'm talking to these guys, and I'm getting to the point where what development people call the ask, where we've laid all the foundation. I've been telling them about what I was calling the finest Christian business program on the planet. I now know that's in error. You know, now I know that it's Messiah College, not Regent University. But despite that, this is the sales pitch that I was giving to them. And I was just getting to the point where I was going to ask them to stroke a check for our business school. When to my door, I don't know why I left my door open, but to my door came one of my other MBA students. His name is Evan. And he's white as a ghost, and he's standing at the door. Now, you got to get the picture here, because these guys had their back to the door. They're just looking at me. I'm looking at them, and the door about 10 feet behind them. So they have no idea what's going on behind them, and Evan is standing there looking panicked. And I'm trying to ignore him as we're having our conversation. I don't know what he's doing there. Obviously, I'm in the middle of a meeting, but he starts waving like this. Evan, what are you doing? I mean, we got to be teaching emotional intelligence here in addition to some of the other stuff that we teach. He starts waving, and I'm ignoring him. Then he holds up a magazine. These guys have no idea what's going on behind them, and he holds up this magazine. Doug, would you do this for me? Just hold up something that looks like a magazine and start waving it back and forth. Not that fast, a little slower. Yeah, just like that. Yeah, it's almost exactly like that. Were you there? I mean, you. The magazine didn't say becoming a critical thinker, unlike this book. I could see even from this distance that it was a gentleman's magazine, if you know what I mean. And not GQ or Sports Illustrated. It was one of those magazines with this very scantily clad woman on the... What is this guy doing? So I'm just about to get up and go close the door, with Evan on the other side of the door, that is, when, to my horror, Evan comes into the room, magazine in hand, and puts it down on the table in front of me and my guests.
Oh, no.
And who do you think is on the cover of the magazine? Wouldn't be a very interesting story, would it? If it weren't Marcia on the cover of this the Girls of the Apprentice issue of this magazine. And there she is on the cover. And to remove all doubt about what's going on, Evan said, and I kid you not, that's Marcia. That's our student. Now I'm the one who's white. My Bolivian friends there looked at me, folded their arms as if to say, you are not the best Christian business program on the planet. You may be, in fact, the worst Christian business program on the planet. We now know two of your students. The guy who carries around these magazines and the girl who poses in them. And they were out of there and on the next plane to Bolivia or to some other school. We lost the money because of this. Horrified. Now, the media comes back to me. Well, what do you think of Marcia now? At which point I said no comment and referred them to our very fine, capable public relations department, who you may know has a lot of experience with awkward situations at Regent University, and they handled it from there. My first few weeks as a business school dean, this sort of thing happened. And it wasn't just shameful for us as a school, and it wasn't just shameful for us as a university. The reason I tell you this is because it was shameful for me personally as an educator. You see, Marcia wasn't just our student. Marcia was my student. I had taught her probably 12 credits out of the 40 credits in her MBA program. She sat in a classroom very much like that. She sat right over there. I remember her in the back row, nothing personal, Doug, but that's where she was. And how do you think she did in that program? She got all A's. She was very outspoken. She was terrific. She was excellent to have in class. She knew all the answers. But when it came to life, when it came to leadership, when it came to representing us as ambassadors of Christ out there, she didn't get an A. She really got an F. But I looked at what I was doing and what we were doing, and I said, we have got to do this differently. And this wasn't just an isolated case. It was only the most egregious case of sending out students who could say one thing but simply could not do it when they were out there in the real world. And it really sent us back to the drawing board to think, how is it that we should do leadership development so that people can actually do what God is calling them to do out there in the marketplace? We were doing it all wrong. One thing that I concluded, we went back and did a whole lot of research. There are a lot of models of change out there from various different disciplines, from economics, from sociology, from psychology, anthropology, philosophy, theology, business, education. There are all these different models of how people change, how you can get permanent change, lasting change, rather than the fleeting changes that we too often see in our students and sometimes in ourselves. And where I've landed and what I've been teaching here at Messiah for the last 5 years is based on a change model that comes from a man named Dallas Willard. Now, I suspect many, if not most of you, are familiar with Professor Willard and some of his work, American philosopher, theologian, probably the most cited Christian theologian of the modern day. Hopefully it is as much of an epiphany for you as it was for me. He claims that permanent change comes from essentially 3 different pathways that are connected to one another if we're seeking any kind of personal change, and this is going to be true of organizational change as well. A lot of times what we focus on is this third piece here, the means. He says vision, intentionality, and means is the model. But a lot of times when we're talking about trying to pursue change in others, in ourselves, in our organization, in our teams, and whatever it is, this is how we do it. This is the method. Go through these 10 steps, and you will come out of that different than you were when you went in. And that was, in fact, what we were doing with Marcia and all of our students there. These are the best practices in leadership. This is the way that it's done. Here are the character traits that you should be pursuing. Here are some experiences for you. Here's some mentorship that we can give to you. And through all of those methods, all of those means, we were trying to produce outstanding, faithful Christian leaders. But clearly there's an antecedent to that, Willard says. Clearly, if they don't intend it, then it's just going to be knowledge. And there's going to be this gap between knowing and doing. There needs to be an intention. There needs to be a will to change. There needs to be a decision to change. And if that decision is there, then in all likelihood they will seek the means, they'll seek the methods, they will pursue real change, and maybe it'll stick. And that's sort of obvious for many of us have seen in ourselves and others, well, maybe we never really wanted it, and that's why it didn't happen. But I think the real genius of the model is when Willard says that there's something even antecedent to intention. How do you develop the intention? How do you make them, how do you get them to want it rather than just hoping that it happens? Well, he says that if there is a vision, that they have some sort of vision of what the changed life looks like, what life looks like if they really pursue this change. And if they see this vision, this perspective as good, then in all likelihood, that will develop the intention to change. And out of that intention, almost automatically, will come the means by which, or the pursuit of the means by which this can happen. And that's a little bit abstract, so let me give you an example. One of the examples Professor Willard liked to use was that of learning a language. If you've ever tried to learn a language, you know, sometimes it can be hard, especially if you try to do that as an adult. There are various means by which we can do that. I can point you to, the Rosetta Stone learning system. You can go and learn Japanese or whatever. But if there's not the intention, then clearly that's probably not going to happen. What he says is, if people have a vision for what their life would look like knowing how to speak Japanese, and they really believe that that is good, there's that vision, what the changed life looks like, and they really believe that that will improve their life, then out of that comes this intention to genuinely pursue, in earnest, I'm going to learn this. And Willard says this explains why a second language is learned much more around the world than it is here in the United States. Because people around the world have a vision for how learning English might really benefit them, and so there's more of an intentionality to go in that direction. Whereas here, not so much. That vision isn't quite as clear, that vision isn't quite as compelling. And then if the intention is there, then they pursue the methods by which, whether it's taking a class or various other kinds of means, they can learn that. Vision followed by intention. We don't start with the means, we start, in fact, with the vision. The same thing with something like Alcoholics Anonymous or kicking any kind of addiction. It doesn't begin with the 12-step program so much as it begins with a bold vision for what the changed life looks like and saying, I want that. That will cause me less pain and people around me less pain than what my current life looks like. And out of that finally comes an intention to turn a corner on this addiction. It could be alcohol, it could be smoking, it could be, fill in the blank. If I want to lose 10 pounds, that's a personal change. And notice, this is a general framework up top here, general pattern, rather, for personal transformation. Any kind of change. And so we're going to get to leadership development in a couple minutes. That's a special case of this broader change model. But any kind of change can come out of this. If I'm looking to lose 10 pounds, well, you can tell me, here's the Weight Watchers point system. You can give me the book. You can give me the website. You can give me the app. You can give me all of the methods necessary. But again, unless I have that vision for why that would be significantly better, and that forms in me the intention, the will, the real decision to change, then those methods will remain just that, just methodology, just means by which that change could possibly happen, but it ends up aborted at some point because I never really wanted it. This is true of discipleship. Becoming more patient, becoming more joyful, gaining more peace, becoming more like Jesus Christ. Are you familiar with the name William Law? A theologian from the 18th century said it very well. He said, this is in the book, A Serious Call to the Devout and Holy Life. He said, the reason that you are not now as faithful as the early Christians were, there's one and only one reason. You never really intended it. You never really wanted it. I love theologians from back in the day because they just kind of put it out there. Didn't worry about what people thought, and they just said it. You never really wanted it. You never had the intention, so no matter what we said about spiritual disciplines, here are these 12 spiritual disciplines you can walk through: prayer and worship and Bible study and all these various things that we say one needs to do to become more like Jesus Christ. Those are the means, those are the methods, those are very good. But if you never really wanted it, well, then it's not going to happen. And what Willard, throughout his whole life, was calling people to do was gain this vision of life in the kingdom of God now. And if we really capture that, and we're really compelled by that, then automatically everything else flows from it. This is true on sports teams as much as it's true anywhere else. The high school teams that I coach, I used to just try to go through the methods. Here's what we need to do, here are the drills, here's the formation, here's the strategy. This is how we're going to win the game, this is how we're going to play as well as we possibly can. I don't focus most of my time there. As much as we do that, I don't focus most of my time there anymore. In the wake of this, I focus most of my time on the V. I try to give them a vision for what this game is supposed to look like. And these are high schoolers, single A ball. They're not really going anywhere with their careers. But I want them to be able to see what it's supposed to look like. So we sit in my living room and we watch these games, these soccer games from over in England, or we watch the U.S. national team, the men's or women's team, or we come here to Messiah and watch the teams play. Or we play the best teams we can find. They're going to beat us 10-0 because they see on the field what it looks like. And it becomes a little more realistic. It's one thing for the Premier League teams to be playing this way, or the Messiah team to play. It's another thing for a 16-year-old to be playing this way right in front of me. They catch a vision of what's possible. And since doing that, on their own volition, they've decided to start their fitness training now for the fall season, months earlier than they ever have before. Those are the means, the fitness things and the skills training and all of that. But because they've caught a vision for what's possible, we see the mechanism turning. We see the change model working here. It's fascinating to watch this happen if we get it right. Let me just mention a couple of things that I do with a leadership course that I teach during J-term, 3-week course, trying to get them to see the character of a Christian leader, some of the attributes and why that would matter. And I mean, it's all about vision. But how do we do it? Well, not just by saying, well, this is humility, and this is excellence, and this is honesty, and this is courage, and there are all these great attributes out there. This is the target, now let's go do that. And it's not even so much about the how-tos. Here's how you become less fearful, or here's how you become more humble. There's certainly some of that. There has to be, I think. But the primary approach there is to have them watch full-length films, feature films, about inspiring leaders. And so we'll watch Invictus and learn about Nelson Mandela and see what he did with reconciliation and forgiveness. We'll watch the movie Gandhi and see how simplicity in leadership can really be transformational. We'll watch a movie called Temple Grandin about a woman with autism who overcame all kinds of fears. We'll watch William Wilberforce, Amazing Grace. We'll look at all of these leaders. Through that, they do start to catch a vision for what this could look like and why it matters. And that's the key, the why it matters stuff. Because if they don't get that, then nothing else really happens. The intention is essentially stillborn. And based on some of the feedback I've gotten from that course, it's making sense to them. They're getting it. I got one comment this year. A student said, I wish, this is a senior, a captain of a sports team here, said, I wish that I could take this course every year from now until I retire. Whoa, and I mean, it's not an isolated comment. It's those kinds of comments that I get out of because they're catching a vision, because they're getting inspired from that. And so the storytelling is a significant pathway to inspiration. I mean, it's Jesus' primary pathway to influence too, right? All the parables, trying to cast this vision of life in the kingdom of God through story, rather than just through bullet points on some screen. Okay. The point, again, and I don't mean to belabor it here, but the point, again, is it can't begin with the M. It cannot begin with the means. Leadership, if it does, that's where I think we end up failing those we lead. And Jesus was very good at this vision casting. Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. That's a vision. You are the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. That is a vision. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and join to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. That's a metaphorical vision. Your name is Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. Talk about an inspiring vision. Where do I sign up? The intention follows from that. What do I have to do, Jesus? The intentionality flows out of the vision casting. And this is all groundwork for the means. One way to think about it is the means of leadership development are really threefold. There is the assessment piece. Here's where we are, evaluating where we are versus some ideal state, versus some desired state of being. And that's 360 feedback and various kinds of assessment mechanisms. But there's also the challenging experiences. I've been talking about experiential exercises and experiential learning. We're very good at this at Messiah. We learn by doing. We learn through stretch experiences, especially. Stretch goals, pushing ourselves through adversity. And then this third piece is support. Whether it's support from the culture or resources or reward systems, or especially from the people around us. The mentoring, the accountability, the encouragement partners that we have. It's essential in any context, whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous or Leadership Anonymous. Hi, my name is Mike and I'm a recovering leader.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, good. You get this. I feel very supported here. In the next hour or the next 30 minutes or whatever is productive for us, we're going to get to the workshop portion of this where we're actually doing something rather than just analyzing a model.